Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and today we're going to be looking at a Visage build for patch 7.37e. So for starting items, we have one set of tangos, a magic stick, which a lot of people are buying first these days before even minute 1, then 2 mangoes, and then 3 iron branches. And you can honestly mix this up a little bit. You could either go for the full wand early. A lot of people are doing that. Maybe even like skipping tangos, sending them out after, minute 0 after you get some runes. You don't have to start with mangoes. You could even start with potentially any kind of item to build into the null talisman, maybe like a circlet if you want, instead of some iron branches. You can mix it up a little bit, but the reason that we want to go this is because everyone's pretty much buying magic stick early, so you probably want to get stick or wand, and then the mangoes are just really good for the fact that you're going to be spamming out soul assumption in lane for the most part. So that's kind of why we need mangoes, but if you feel like you're going to get a ton of stick charges, maybe you can forego the mangoes and just go for more of these other smaller items that you're definitely going to be buying in the early game. Then early game, we're going to get a null talisman, a wand, and then our boots. And you don't have to go null talisman, but you're probably going to go this for the most part in every game just because it helps you spam soul assumption, which is the main thing you're going to be doing in the lane, and also even farming later on. It's like the main thing the hero does, and you don't necessarily need a bracer, but that is like an optional thing. If you feel like you need a little bit of extra tankiness and regen, you can go for that instead of the null talisman, or you can skip them altogether, but you probably should be going for the null talisman since most people are buying it these days. And then I just say brown boots as the last thing you're going to be buying as early game quote-unquote items, because you're not going to go and finish your boots right away. You're actually going to go straight into the drum of endurance, and so you actually buy the wind lace first, probably just to speed up your movement speed in general, so your items can look like this. Obviously you probably don't have this branch, or you don't have your tangos at the end there. Maybe you can even buy a raindrops or something like that. That's very early on what your items are going to look like before you build into your core items later on in the lane, later on in the game. Then you're going to finish your drum of endurance, then you're going to finish tranquil boots, and this helps you with sustain for your HP. And with all of these items, you have some decent mana sustain too. You might need to go back to base every once in a while, or you might need to send out some clarities here and there, but this is decent mana regen with these items, which is why we want to go for the null talisman for the most part. But obviously you have some intelligence here too, which helps on the drum of endurance. And then the ideal core item that you want to go for is Orchid. Now, you don't have to go this every game. In fact, you probably won't go for Orchid every single game as your first big item. I just put it here because this is the ideal in the perfect game where you feel like you don't need any defensive items at all and you just want to go full offensive, you want a full push, you just want to go straight to being aggressive, and you feel like you don't really need anything else because you've had such a good lane and the enemy is just crushed. This is just helping you snowball even more. You're such a threat on the map. They literally can't survive this early when you get this early Orchid because they don't have mantas yet on their cores, they don't have BKBs, they don't have all these defensive items on supports. So it's really, really good to go for this early. If you can afford it, you can get away with it. And then round that out with the Boots of Bearing and then go into your late game items. But I will briefly say there are situational items that you probably will go for instead of Orchid, and the biggest one is going to be Pipe. So a lot of times, if you feel like you need to be tankier and you feel like you need to be more team-oriented, you're going to go for Pipe first, right after your Tranquil Boots, or maybe even Vlad's. Vlad's is like half aggressive, half defensive. Then you can kind of go from Vlad's right into Orchid, but for the most part, you probably are going to get defensive items like Pipe first and then finish out your Boots of Bearing. I'm just putting this here because all these defensive items are optional, essentially, if you need them in the game. You can even buy all of them at a certain point, and that really does mix the build up, but this is really the ideal for aggressive offensive style Visage that you would like to play in every game. It's just not going to happen every time because of the way, the game evolves and the lanes work out and all that kind of stuff. Then from there, in the late game, you're probably going to want to get a BKB. You don't have to get BKB every time because sometimes there's just not a lot of things that BKB is good against. Maybe there's a lot of things that go through BKB. Those are the only real stuns they have. And a lot of the other stuff is just stuff you don't really care about that you can survive through once you get your Ags and once you get your Shard. So once you get all of this, then it can be like, okay, well, maybe I don't need the BKB. I can just go straight in for the Ags and then finish it out with an AC and finish it out with a Bloodthorn. So this is something that you're going to be having in terms of an inventory in a lot of different games. And probably, honestly, you're going to have a Pipe built in here. So you can look at this inventory here as your 6 slotted in almost every single game. Because a lot of games you are going to be buying this Pipe, but you don't necessarily have to go for these other defensive items. And then eventually, even if you don't go Orchid early, let's say you just go for Boots of Bearing, you go BKB, you go for Ags and stuff, you're going to probably round it out later in the game, 50 minutes or something like that, with a Bloodthorn. And eventually you will sell Vlad's even if you do buy it, because it is good, but it's just a smaller item that takes up a lot of inventory space, you know, until obviously then you get the Ag's blessing, and then you can even put another thing in here. You could put like a sheep or something like that if you need more lockdown. If you need more damage, you could go for a more damage oriented item, that kind of stuff. But you know, late game, these are the items you're going to be buying, and you're probably have an inventory something like this is going to look something like this for the most part late in the game. And then situational items I already kind of talked about. We have Bracer, which you can buy maybe instead of Null Talisman. We have all these defensive items which you can go. So once you get your pipe early, if you didn't go for Orchid, you can go Crimson Guard. You can go Guardian Greaves. If you really feel like your main job in this game is to be tanky and you feel like there's really nothing else that you can do, or your team really isn't going to survive unless you tank up and you just have to tank damage, you can go for this full defensive item, you know, build with the Shard. Maybe get an Ags, but probably even skip that and just go for AC for a little bit of combo, maybe BKB, just full defensive, you know, auras, tank ability, that kind of stuff. That is an option if you feel like you have enough damage on your team, but you just need to soak spells. Then, like I said, Scythe of Ice later for more lockdown, Lotus for defensive capabilities, for purging and reflecting, Lincolns if there's doom and stuff like that. And then all of these items here are just like potential, very niche, like 1%, maybe 5% of games, like Nullifier in very specific matchups, Hurricane Pike in matchups. Shiva's Guard can be good with this hero when you combine it with your Soul Assumption, but later on in the game, you kind of just do more right-click damage. Yes, you're still going to be spamming this out, but still it doesn't really synergize with that a ton, but the armor is great. This is a decent item overall in this patch. Then Octarine, kind of rare, but again, you can spam your spells more. Heaven's Halberd only in very rare situations that you need to disarm people. And then maybe Rod of Atos if you need some more lockdown, which then eventually builds into Gleipnir, which is why it's here. So these, you know, last, 6 or so items, they're very rare that you're really going to be buying these in most games. Like I said, maybe 5%, 1% of games, but they are optional that can work on the hero in very specific situations. Then in terms of skill build, we're going to be going for Soul Assumption first every single game. That's really not an option. And then Grave Chill second. Again, not really anything to consider there. Soul Assumption third. And then 1 point in Gravekeeper's Cloak is good enough for right now. In the past, you may have been able to put more points in Gravekeeper's Cloak because it was a better ability, but it's really not that good right now. So we're kind of going to skip this altogether. Maybe just 1 point in it. If anything, you might even want to put another point in Grave Chill and skip this if you feel like being tankier, that 1 point isn't really going to do very much. And then we're going to max Soul Assumption obviously first because it's just great for early damage. Get our birds whenever we can. Max Grave Chill next, and then we'll get Gravekeeper's Cloak as the last ability that we're going to be putting points into, and obviously getting your ult whenever you can as well. And then in terms of talents, we're going to be going for the right talent first, but we're actually going to get this at level 11 instead of level 10 because it is a Grave Chill cooldown talent, and you want to max out Grave Chill with that 10 point instead of getting this, because obviously that extra point in Grave Chill is just better than having it at a lower cooldown. So that is one little weird thing about the build, but really other than that, it's pretty simple. You go right talent, then you go left talent for more Soul Assumption buffs, which you can hit 3 different heroes with that, which is great. This Grave Chill one, people do pick that sometimes, but it's not very good. Then Soul Assumption again, we're building all into Soul Assumption with this hero. That's pretty much the focus of it until late in the game. And then 25, 1 familiar, you extra familiar is just really good when you start getting really a lot more right-click damage, pushing potential, all that kind of stuff when you do hit 25. And so that is the Visage build for patch 7.37e. As always, guys, if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.